Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight for this workshop. This workshop will be partially in person and partially remote, and we welcome everyone who is joining us either in person or virtually. A couple things to our virtual attendees and listeners. If you are just listening, please mute the microphone on your computer or on your phone so that we do not get feedback from other things that might be going on around you. During this meeting, if you are virtual, board members and some staff members should be visible on your video. Same thing for the board members. Please remember to mute your mics when you're not speaking. And please do not use the WebEx chat application. At this point, if you are virtual and you are having any technical issues, please contact Drew Anderson, and his contact information is at the top of today's agenda. So we'll begin this workshop. In kicking off this workshop, I would like to know and ask the board, typically for workshops and special meetings, we do not allow public comment. I would like us to discuss the resolution at hand and discuss with town staff the resolution we have before us, and then have public comment. Hopefully in our discussion we can answer any public questions or concerns and then move forward from that if the board would like to allow public comments.
I agree with public comments.
Okay. We will make appropriate time between the workshop and the special meeting for town staff to complete changes to the resolution. So we will continue with that goal and break out public comments between this workshop and the special meeting in order to get in as many people as possible. Mr. Ricci, will you give us a brief overview of the resolution that has been drafted? Sorry, I didn't realize you guys didn't have microphones over there. My fault.
So the resolution you have before you indicates what I believe has been expressed as the opinion of the board relating to both the necessity of all employees and of all businesses to be declared essential, along with the town's opinion as to the legality of the current COVID restrictions enforced by the governor of Colorado.
Sorry, my microphone wasn't on. At this point, I'll open it up to board discussion, changes, anything else.
If I may, I just want to thank everyone for their participation in this process. We originally started out declaring the title as a COVID sanctuary city, declaring Monument as a COVID sanctuary city, but as the process evolved, we began to realize, hey, we're not in violation of the law. It's the state of Colorado that's in violation of the law. So our resolution now, the title now reads a resolution asserting the rights of the town of Monument and its residents and condemning the unconstitutional limitation imposed upon their freedom by the governor of Colorado. And our goal here is we cited a number of, it got into a little more legalese than I wanted for the town. But I believe it's good that we have some of the case law citings in here because if the attorneys in Denver decide to read it, they see that we do have a constitutional case for our position. And so anyway, I just want to let everybody know that that's kind of the tack that we took. We just decided to say, hey, it is unconstitutional. One of the things that I really appreciate that Mr. Ricci found, or I can't believe it may have come from Mayor Wilson, that says, whereas the Colorado Constitution, in the Colorado Bill of Rights, Article 2, Section 24, the people have the right to peacefully assemble for the common good and to apply to those invested in the powers of government for redress of grievance by petition of remittance. And then the next section goes on that says that all persons have natural, essential, inalienable rights, among which may be reckoned the right of enjoying, defending their lives and liberties, of acquiring, possessing, and protecting property. So I think it's important that we all understand the Colorado Constitution states that you have a right to earn a living. So acquiring property is making a living. And so I think that's the grounds that we're standing on, as well as we brought in religious freedom for churches and the freedom of assembly, the whole concept that you can only have 10 people in your home, whether it's a precinct meeting or whether you're inviting your family over for dinner or whether it's a church meeting. The government cannot restrict because we have the freedom of assembly according to the U.S. Constitution. So anyway, that's the direction we decide to take, and just say, hey, we're not trying to be a rebellious crowd here. We're just trying to say, hey, we're going to follow the law as it's written, and we're just using this resolution to say that.
Thank you, Trustee Stevens. Other comments from the board? Okay, I have a couple items in the resolution that I would like further discussion on or minor changes on. The first item is paragraph 8, along with therefore it be resolved paragraph 4. The whereas paragraph number 8 gives the overview of the governor altering the restrictions without regard to their purpose of health and safety, and then under the therefore paragraph 4, it calls upon El Paso County. I think that's somewhat contradictory. We point out that the governor did something and then asked the county to fix it in a sense. I think that should be changed to the Board of Trustees calls upon the state, because the county, from my understanding, does not have any sort of power in this. So I'll take any discussion on that particular item, or an agreement with changing that from El Paso County to the state.
I agree.
That's fine with me.
Mr. Ricci, are you seeing where I'm discussing this? And is there any chance we can get this resolution on the screen for the people in here to see? Would that be possible, Drew? Okay. So thank you for the agreements on that. The next item is, therefore be it resolved by the Board of Trustees, paragraph 2, the town of Monument will not abide by any limit to use of its facilities in order to comply with executive orders. The town manager shall use his best judgment in light of the needs of the town and the desires of the employee. This is already in effect. We're already doing this. The town manager, we've given authority to say, hey, you need to do what work you need to do. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be in this resolution. Mr. Ricci, what do you think about that?
Hello?
So we put this in here to give the town manager a little bit of protection so that he could, and flexibility so that we could address the number of people in the building for their own personal safety and kept that to the forefront. In line with what we put further on down with each business is responsible in evaluating their own establishment and their capacity to safely accept patrons. It was kind of calling out the town manager in that way. I don't object, and neither does the town manager, to removing it.
Well, I do think the town manager does have to have the authority within this facility to be able to do what he feels is appropriate. I think each business, one of the things that towards the end of the resolution that Mr. Ritchie pointed out is the Board of Trustees calls upon each business and patron to respect the determination of others as they determine the level of protection instituted in their property. And the Board of Trustees calls upon each business to be responsible in evaluating their own establishment and the capacity to safely accept patrons. What I'm trying to do, or one of the things I wanted to do, is we've got this mentality the government needs to decide everything for us. Now, the way we get out of that world is the individuals have to start taking responsibility for themselves. Now, I guarantee you, if we become the next COVID hotspot here in Monument because we think we're throwing cares to the wind and doing anything we want to do, they will point to us and say, see, that's what happens if we trust the people to do what they want to do. But if we're willing as a town to be able to assume responsibility and act in a responsible manner, that the businesses do what they feel is right. Some businesses are huge, and you've got plenty of room for great capacity. Other businesses are a lot smaller, and they need to make adjustments. And then the last paragraph says the board calls upon the patrons to use their best judgment when entering a store and feel free to walk away if they do not feel safe. We do not, and nor does the governor, know your underlying health conditions. And so you may be at a high risk and another individual may be at a low risk. And so each individual needs to take it upon themselves to exercise responsibility and say, hey, it was not the government's fault. It's not the board's fault because I got sick. It's my fault because I went into a store that I knew was overcrowded and I'm at a high-risk situation, and therefore I should have acted more responsibly on my behalf. And so that is what makes this work. To me, those last two paragraphs are the most important, because what makes it work is people saying, yes, I understand what my limitations are, and I'm not going to blame the government for something that I should take responsibility for that they don't even know. So anyway, I kind of got off on a tangent.
I was going to say, can we go back to paragraph 2? Do we think that is, we already gave, we already gave the town manager authority to use his judgment on what goes on with town staff, right, and how many and where. So do we need paragraph 2 under the therefore?
So,
second sentence, the town manager shall use his best judgment in light of the needs of the town and desires of the employees.
Yeah, I think that should be there. I mean, we can strike the first sentence if you want. You can say, but if the town manager needs to have the right. Well,
I'm saying we've already given him that in previous resolutions.
Oh, have we? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. I don't remember.
It's been a while. It was when this first started.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, this came up during discussion this afternoon that there could be some town employees that felt that part of this may have overlooked their role within the town and how they would be impacted by the resolution. So language was added to cover them in particular.
I think as town staff, it still falls under Mike's purview.
Totally agree, and that's why Mr. Ricci wrote it in that way as the town manager. This was something that he brought to my attention during our discussion of the draft that Ron and I have been going over.
Well, then I'll look to Mr. Foreman and Mr. Ricci for thoughts.
You know, I think it's almost been a year ago y'all passed an emergency resolution, and in that emergency resolution you gave me wide and varied powers to be able to continue to run this town. And I think during that emergency powers, you gave me the opportunity to do exactly what this says. So if you don't want to repeat the same resolution that you did previously, I understand.
Okay. So the board on that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Strike it.
I remember.
Please remove that paragraph 2.
I would like
Okay.
to throw in my 5 cents if I can, please.
Go ahead.
On the original statement that you had made, Mayor Wilson, where it talks about the governor has acted unconstitutionally, I would like to add plus its administration, because he doesn't act alone.
Okay.
Which
do you have
paragraph? Yeah. Which paragraph is she referring to? I'm not.
I believe she's referring to paragraph 8.
Okay.
And we can discuss this item. I think it comes down, I'm in agreement with it comes down to the governor. He's the final say in these restrictions, although state health department may be guiding them. They're not the ones that put them in place.
So under the statute itself that gives him the right to make the executive orders, it is the power of the governor that is acting here. So he is acting alone in this regard from I would say a legal standpoint. I'm sure he is getting advice from from CDPHE, but it is his choice to implement any of these emergency regulations.
Could we He makes the final decision and the buck stops with him?
That's correct.
Trustee Clark, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Something is wrong with my mute button. Perhaps then not. Since he does act alone according to legal restrictions, somehow or other, I would like to put in the body of this resolution some kind of objection to what the public health department is also doing. Yeah, I'd be open to any suggestions from the board as to how they feel about it, but I think we need to cover the broad spectrum of what is actually happening here in our state.
Okay. Other comments on that?
I have a question for Trustee Clark. So are you referring to things such as the plexiglass around the booths at restaurants and placing tables a certain distance, certain percentage of capacity? Is that what you're referring to as it relates to health department? Trustee Clark, can you hear us? Can you hear me? Now I can. Oh, good. Something is wrong with my mute button. I think that I'm referring to the fact that it would be the public health department's purview to issue the fines or license revocations in such an instance where they felt that the compliance to the governor's mandates were not being followed.
Mr. Ricci.
So if I may ask a question here, the complaint appears to be that the governor is co-opting or has co-opted county health departments and the state CDPHE in order to enforce his executive order. Is that the concern?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. So involving the whole group of people that are utilizing their authority unconstitutionally, I think needs to be addressed in this resolution, not just exclusively the governor.
I think the concern, though, is those groups are by direction of the governor, and therefore they have no authority.
So it was my understanding that the public health department, Colorado State Health Department, is the one that comes up with the processes and procedures and presents them to the governor. Is that not correct?
Those are by recommendation.
Without the governor's action, they would not be in place.
I see.
So we are operating under an emergency order from the governor. And without that emergency order and the recommendations from CDPHE and other sources that he has adopted, there would be no restrictions.
I see. Well, then I will take back my request to add his administration into this resolution.
Okay. Make sure you're kind of close to it.
Just piggybacking off of that then. So what we're saying is the governor is the only one that's responsible, basically. I mean, the health department, everything falls under his direction. But if we boil it all down to responsibility lies with the governor. So we're just...
That is correct. It is declared by him and continually declared in 30-day increments by the governor. Without an executive order, an emergency order, there would be no COVID restrictions currently in place, because the only other way to do it would be a normal legislative process or state rulemaking process, and neither of those are happening.
So is it also the governor who is directing the Department of Health, the Board of Health, to remove licenses to allow restaurants and bars to operate by removing their liquor license or their business license?
So they are operating, I would say, as the governor and the chief executive for the state. He bears ultimate responsibility for the decisions that each of these entities take in enforcing the rules. I'm unaware of a specific back and forth discussion or direction from the governor to CDPHE to take a particular action related to a violation of the statute.
So it's totally possible that if there is a violation, without further contact to the governor, the Department of Health very well could go and take action to put a business out of business based on the previous executive orders.
That would be my understanding.
So then why not call those departments out for shuttering businesses down without further response from the governor himself?
So the rules by which they are determining that a violation has occurred come from that executive order. And so from from the agency's perspective, they are simply enforcing both the executive order and the penalties that come with violation of said order.
I think in a sense it would be calling out those who are doing what they were told to do, in a sense.
That is correct.
And I feel that there is absolutely zero reason why the public in Colorado, more specifically the citizens of Monument, should know the names and positions of the people who are attempting to shut down a business that the governor's probably not even aware of when they take action.
I don't know that listing everybody in detail like that, but I think what you could say to keep it simple might be the governor, his office, and agencies reporting to him.
I think that's perfect, Trustee Romanello.
I'm good with that. Just something to expand on the fact that he probably is not aware of every action that his departments are taking.
And I think, like, when you say the governor's office or the president's office, I'm sure that's maybe not a technical legal term, but it's I think, reasonably understood that you're talking about the authority of that office and what it's doing.
I would question whether we would include those for the reason that it's by the governor's direction, in the sense that we are calling out somebody for doing their job that provides their family money. You're basically calling them out for doing what we're trying to say we want everybody to be able to do, and that's to earn a living.
Are you going to reword the sentence there when it says for his own political interest, because that's referring to him as an individual? We're changing the sentence to groups of people, and I think we need to be consistent in the language there. as to how we're going to word that if we're going to start.
If I may jump in on this, apologies for interruption. The paragraph that says, whereas on January 2021, this kind of illustrates, I think, the issue that we're all talking about here. CDPHE had implemented its dial framework related to the different colors and the rates and the levels of positivity for COVID in testing within the county, within individual counties. Simply by fiat, the governor on January 4th directed the state health department to take everybody who was in the red area of the dial and change them to orange. And that was, and whether or not CDPHE believes in what it was doing with the red or not, they were directed by the governor to change the rules and change their enforcement. So I think it's a good illustration of the fact that these guys that state agencies, that entities that are operating to enforce these laws are simply doing what they are being directed from above.
So in this particular case, January 4th, the governor actually went against the health department's recommendation.
That is correct.
So from my point of view, it should stay with just the governor. Yes, no? I'm okay with that. Okay.
Well, let me ask, was your concern one that if this becomes some type of a court case, somebody doesn't squirm out of it because, oh, the health department did this, but you didn't list them type thing, and that somebody on opposing counsel would try to use that to wiggle out of having some unaccountable alphabet bureaucracy do something that he didn't? Or is that your concern, or is that not a concern?
No, I think the overall goal of this particular section is exactly what Mr. Ricci said, is there was not a health-related event that justified him moving from red to orange, which demonstrates how arbitrary some of these regulations are. And I think that's the idea of what we want to get across in that paragraph.
Then you should leave it as is.
And then I would like to say something. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So if the governor can arbitrarily move that dial and he initiates that order to the health department, and the health department knows it's arbitrary and decides to do it anyway without protest, are they not complicit in his actions?
Again, I would say they're acting by his direction.
So in the last war we fought, they are actually holding the generals and such and directors and such of those actions accountable to the law now, because there is a greater law at work here, the law of your conscience of what's right and wrong in regard to the Constitution. And as people who are elected to office and people who are hired to help the electeds adhere to the Constitution, we need to think about expanding this definition, maybe not here in this paragraph, but somewhere, that they should be held liable for the decisions they make, just like we all do. Thank you.
Any other comments on that? So, Trustee Clark, are you asking for an additional change?
I'm asking that we somewhere in the body of this resolution, wherever anybody feels comfortable, put something in here that says that the public health department cannot arbitrarily just come into Monument and attack a business for what they feel is failure to comply with the governor's unconstitutional mandates.
How about the top of the second page? Whereas the governor's emergency orders deny the rights of the people to peaceably assemble at government meetings in the private places of business to engage in constantly protected activities. maybe it's the governor's emergency orders that are also carried out by agencies under his direction.
Yeah, or and agencies that would therefore enforce said directives. Yeah, something like that.
Thank you, Trustee Romanello. That's perfect.
So it would say something to the effect of, whereas the governor's emergency orders, and then maybe in parentheses, and agencies that would enforce such orders, and parentheses, deny the rights of people. Is that adequate to what we're trying to do or not?
Commas, not parentheses.
Okay. All right.
Yes, yes. That sounds great.
Are you busily typing, Mr. Ritchie? I love it.
I am.
Good. I see that.
So just to be clear, we have board agreements on that.
If I may propose some language here, whereas the governor's orders, comma, as enforced by state agencies, comma, deny the rights of people. Does that work for everyone?
That works.
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. Additional comments, questions from the board at this time still.
I just want to mention I appreciate what you were saying, Trustee Stevens, and also Mayor Wilson, about the arbitrary actions of the governor as it relates to deciding the extent of our lockdowns and whatnot. I do know that while I received an individual email from somebody that was objecting to what we are doing here tonight or proposing tonight, almost I'd say all other emails were positive, and from the public as it relates to wanting us to move forward with a resolution such as this. I did want to bring up a point. I tend to go on a regular basis to the Johns Hopkins University Medical Center website that has all the COVID data throughout the world. I don't know how accurate it is, especially when our tests are half positive and half negative, on one person. But I do want to mention, in regards to arbitrary decisions, one of the strictest locations for lockdowns is LA County. We all know that. We've seen the viral video with the restaurant owner who has a Hollywood movie company setting up right outside her restaurant, but she's completely closed down. LA County has the most confirmed cases in the country, 920,000. LA County also has the highest death rate in the nation, 12,250. The next number below that is Cook County in Illinois, in Chicago, 8,760. Then we go to Seattle, a county. Then we go to a New York County. Then we go to Arizona, and the numbers are dropping. Then we go back to New York. Then there's Miami. And then there's another New York. So where there's a very strict lockdown, the numbers are worse than the places that don't have the lockdowns. And you hear blanket statements on the news all the time that says, oh, well, we're not doing that bad. We're Texas, and we're not doing that bad. We're doing better than New York, or we're equal to New York, or whatever. Well, the numbers really don't show that they're equal. They're actually doing better, and they're not in lockdown. So I wanted to bring up that data in regards to what's going on around the country as it relates to the strict lockdowns, because one of the emails I received said, follow the science. I see no science in what's happening around this country. And I do question the results of the tests, period. But I wanted to bring up this point because when I'm told to look at the science, there's no science to look at. I just wanted to make that point.
And as I said, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Elliott. I think there is plenty of discussion about this topic, and I would like to get through finishing the language and then get into kind of our personal reasonings and our thoughts about this afterwards. And then if it needs more adjustments to the language, we can do that. So as far as the language of the resolution, are there any more comments, questions? I have one if there's not others that would like to go. Go ahead.
Just came to my mind and just a thought that of course we are appropriately addressing, Denver governor, this and that. What if there were, for some reason, federal agencies that ended up holding hands with state agencies to enforce? Is that something we'd want to address in the future or not now? I mean, what if something like that happened? What if there was a unholy marriage, so to speak, like that?
I think it is difficult to address in this particular resolution because we do not have facts that we can point to. Essentially, we don't have all cases run on facts from a legal perspective, and at this point, I don't have a case at issue.
And I am not by any means asking to add that in right now or make this more complicated. It was just a secondary thought of, what if or if in the future.
We always have the ability to repeal or amend any resolution that we have published.
That's all I got.
Okay. My last one concerns the therefore, under therefore, paragraph 4. The Board of Trustees understands that notwithstanding their constitutional nature, state authorities will attempt to pressure businesses to comply and may threaten their livelihoods. I think we need to be more clear in that paragraph that this board does not hold authority over somebody's liquor license or somebody's business beyond the town of Monument, their business license, their food license. And we need to make sure that businesses understand that no matter what we say, if they're not following the guidelines appropriate to them, the state health department might come in the middle of the night and shut them down. And we can't do anything about it. We don't have that authority. So I think we need to make this paragraph clear that businesses understand that they are responsible to meet any guidelines they feel they need to meet their business. If they want to go against guidelines, that's fine. We're not the responsible authority to protect them from the state health department or the state liquor authority or any of those agencies. There's no way we can do it. Trustee Stevens, you look like you're thinking hard.
I'd like to say something to that.
Paragraph 4 under the therefore. Oh, is it 5? I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
My point being is I don't want to give businesses a false sense of security that they can do. We have businesses that are very small and probably don't follow politics, and if they hear us doing this resolution, they may think different rules apply to them, and then unknowingly have some other agency shut them down or close them or cause them great financial harm if they assume that we are the authority on that particular license or depending on what it is.
I think adding the word monument businesses in there would be an ideal situation too. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. So making it monument businesses, and then the following line in that paragraph pretty much defines who we're talking to and what exactly is applicable and what is not. If you read the second sentence there, Mayor Wilson. Do you see that?
Are you at the board therefore calls on each business?
Yes.
My concern with that is it still comes from us and expresses that the individual to determine for themselves the level. It does not define where the authority lies.
So maybe within where the authority lies within the boundaries of monument.
But still, a monument business can be closed down whether we agree or not.
If I may make a quick comment on that, I might suggest an addition where it says, and may threaten their livelihoods, period. The town of Monument does not have the ability to preclude state enforcement actions, period. The board therefore calls on each business and individual.
That flows much better.
But we don't have the ability. If the state comes in and withdraws your liquor license, we have no ability to contradict that.
The only time we see a liquor license is for a new liquor license or violation, correct? Other than that, it all goes through the state.
Well, that brings up an interesting point. Why are they even here then for a liquor license if they have if there's no authority here, if all the authority is at the state level?
Well, that's why I said let's put the word sanctuary in there so they understand that they can't come in and harm the businesses by taking away a liquor license under sanctuary status.
But when you discuss sanctuary, you're talking about things you do have authority over, like in the case of Denver being a sanctuary city for immigrants. They have the authority to tell their staff not to communicate with the federal government. In this case, take 2019, the town of Monument had the authority to declare sanctuary over 2A in regards to the red flag. We could give our police department direction not to enforce certain parts of that. In this, we do not have any authority to direct town staff to allow for liquor license because it's not something we have authority over.
We don't give our permission for a liquor license?
We give our permission for the liquor license within town, but the ultimate authority of it is by the state. So a liquor license comes from the state and passes through us, and we just, bless it as it goes by.
I see.
I'm sorry, Ms. Hogan is saying that I'm incorrect on something.
Well, Colorado is a dual licensing state. You, as the Board of Trustees, are the local licensing authority. So a liquor license has to not only be approved by the state of Colorado, but also by the town of Monument. In the reverse, violations of a liquor license would come before the local licensing authority as well as the state of Colorado.
So I think that does fit with my point, though, that we don't have ultimate control over the liquor license.
But we have partial control, and underneath that partial control, perhaps that sanctuary status could apply.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a violation, which this would be, they would have to in order to pull a liquor license, they'd have to say, here's the reason why, and it'd have to come before us. Is that correct, Mrs. Hogan?
Yes.
It is my understanding that if a liquor licensee was in violation of state statute, that it would come before the local licensing authority.
So then I would propose that we would then say, okay, what are you being cited for? Is there any violation of the liquor laws that you have committed? And if now it's one thing if they're selling beer out the back door to 15-year-olds, but if and we can't cover that. But if they come in because of a COVID thing, that in my view that's not a legitimate thing, and I would think this board would reject that.
I agree with your train of thought, Trustee Stevens. I'm still concerned about the higher authority. Mr. Ricci?
Yeah, I think the rub here is that regardless of the actions that the town of Monument will or will not support, and as Trustee Stevens indicated, the town staff could take direction not to revoke a liquor license if it comes before them. However, if it comes before a state body and the state body takes action, we have a different issue, right? So, being a dual licensing state, violations can be cited by either us or the state, and so that's the concern that I have, is that the state may decide to push forward even without our local input.
But we could step in and try to protect them.
to the degree that we have the authority to do so.
Yes, within our authority.
They cannot revoke the license without us. I mean, like, we would have final say. Is that what I'm saying? Sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay. Can you repeat the question?
Please do.
No, I was just asking if, like, the state tries to revoke the license, can we stop it? I'm just saying. I'm just wondering if they can completely revoke it without us doing anything, or do we need to sign off on it? Essentially.
That's a good question, and that's my concern. Are they being dual licensing? Do those always have to coincide, or does the state have authority in some areas where they don't have to ask our permission?
Well, I would refer that question to our town attorney. I'm not familiar with a case where the state has, overridden a local licensing authority's decision, but I just don't have that history.
So I would ask
recently, the state of Colorado passed a law allowing either the state or the local licensing authority to pull it. And so what this is going to operate like is you need both entities' permission to pull a liquor license, to grant a liquor license, but either can pull it. And so from our perspective, if the state decides in their infinite wisdom to pull a liquor license, we are not going to be able to prevent that.
But can we object to it?
Well, we can object to a lot of things. I don't know that the state really cares.
We're objecting tonight.
And
what we're doing.
I know.
What risk do we open ourselves up to if we go and try to buck every state decision?
Right.
Let's
get
back, because we can't really defend every business and what they do. We're here to remove ourselves basically from that anyway. We can't tell the business if they're going to comply or not. It's up to them.
We're trying to finish the language up, right?
Right.
So were you guys good?
Real quick, yeah, Mr. Ricci, can you restate the last change you had? Yeah, your last suggestion.
Okay. My last suggestion would have the paragraph read: the Board of Trustees understands that, notwithstanding their unconstitutional nature, state authorities will attempt to pressure businesses to comply and may threaten their livelihoods. The new sentence inserted is: the town of Monument does not have the ability to preclude state enforcement actions. The board therefore calls on each business and individual to determine for themselves the level to which they desire to comply in their best interest with the governor's unconstitutional orders. And I think from a legal perspective, we can talk about whether or not the state has the ability to independently pull a liquor license. We can talk about individual enforcement actions that they may take. I don't know what creative actions what they might attempt under executive order or another law passed by the legislature. So from my perspective, I think it's important for us to say we don't have control over what enforcement actions the state of Colorado may choose to take. And that was the point that I wanted to put forward here. Whether or not it will impact a liquor license or not is important, but we don't have any control over what the state might try to do.
And I also think we need to understand that we're using liquor licenses as the example. We saw in Castle Rock, CNC Cafe get closed down, who didn't have a liquor license, to my knowledge, which the town of Castle Rock and Douglas County opposed. Not meeting restrictions.
They had a large gathering of maskless human beings trying to eat breakfast.
So to the language point, are we happy with his adjustment?
I think if he feels that covers us, and as long as we feel it gets the point across to our businesses that we're not the authority on some of these things.
And we can't protect you on all these things.
Exactly.
Okay.
It is up to them to meet what requirements they feel necessary to meet. And if they don't, then another authority, another agency may come in and tell them otherwise. And we heard that in our last discussion with an owner of one of our businesses that also has a business in Colorado Springs, and she mentioned an agency showed up just to check on them, and it had nothing to do with the county or the city. So I just want to make sure our businesses are aware of that.
I would agree with the attorney's change.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. Is there any other changes to the language of the resolution at this time?
If I may ask for a quick clarification from the board. The second paragraph under now therefore, did you wish to remove the second sentence or the entire paragraph?
Where are you?
The entire paragraph.
I just wanted to be clear on that. And then what would be the new paragraph 3, but the original paragraph 4 where we changed the Board of Trustees calls upon the governor to take all necessary steps. I wanted to make a quick point of clarification. The reason why El Paso County was initially listed in that situation is that it was I believe it was meant by the drafters to be a point where they were asking the El Paso County Board of Health and the county commissioners to declare all El Paso County businesses essential. Notwithstanding what the governor does in response to our resolution, we could also ask the county to take that action.
Yes.
And that's where my question comes in, whether it's in the county's authority to.
I actually wrote to the county commissioners, Mayor Wilson, and I was told by County Commissioner Williams that it is not within their authority. They can do a resolution to become something similar to a sanctuary status, but they have to get the public health department to agree to that definition change, and she said they did not have the authority to do so. I'll be happy to forward the correspondence to you, Mayor Wilson, if you like.
That's okay. I think we understand what we're saying. So then I would still say it would be the state, wouldn't it? If the county doesn't have that authority.
The county commissioners don't have that authority because they have a separate board of health that is appointed that would make that determination. If you remember the Garfield County resolution that was brought before them previously, my understanding is the reason that the county commissioners there in Garfield County were able to say we're going to designate everyone as an essential business is because they're a small county, one-stop shop. The county commissioners also happen to be the commissioners for the Board of Health, also happen to be probably the dog catcher or whatever. And so that's an option for them. You can call on the county health department to take that action or not. I just wanted to bring it to your attention because I think that was the original purpose of that paragraph, but I understand the change you've made and I believe it's effective.
So would it be more appropriate for the Board of Trustees calls upon local health departments?
Yes.
To take all necessary steps to prevent the harm of local businesses and minimize the harm of the governor's unconditional orders, reclassifying every business as an essential business.
Yes, that sounds great.
Trustee Wakind?
Well, my question is, who the hell does the county health department report to if they don't report to the commissioners?
State Health Department?
There must be somebody.
Commissioner Williams?
I can't hear.
Commissioner Williams is stepping up to the microphone.
Commissioner Williams, so.
I can't hear her.
You turn it on, make sure it's on.
Can you hold on?
Oh, now it's on. Got it. Sorry. So can you hear me? I assume she can. The Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment is actually over our county Department of Health. And so what the state statutes say is they say the Board of County Commissioners can create a Board of Health, which we do because of the size of the county we are. Ours has 9 people on it, of which a majority can't be from the same industry. So we have doctors, we have a coroner, we have a nurse, a chiropractor, and then 2 county commissioners and 1 city councilman. If we disagree with our own local Board of Health as county commissioners, we can have them replaced with the state Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. So I assure you we're getting the better end of the deal here with our own local Department of Health.
Is that a state constitutional issue, having our local Board of Health report to the state Board of Health?
Do you mean
What
constitutional or statute?
Is that state constitution?
Okay.
It's actually in the statute. So the governor declares the emergency, and he appoints the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment Director, which is in Title 24, if I'm correct. And then the county is in Title 29 and 30. And so it took a while to research all of this. We have talked, we have a legislative council opinion essentially that says, no, if you guys decided to get rid of your own Board of Health, it would default to the state. It wouldn't even default to yourself, which is very frustrating, obviously.
Thank you for that answer.
Okay.
Thank you for coming. And thank all the maskless humans for coming. Thank you. As the reason why I'm asking if we're happy with the language is there is some comment to some of this that would be appropriate, but I want to make sure that we get our language finished.
Is the board happy with the language currently? And we can revisit it in the special meeting if something comes up between now and then that we feel needs to be addressed. So at this time, I'll move to board comments. So board members can make comments on this topic about why and what we feel is our reasoning behind this. Would anybody?
Well, I think that if we all understand what we're doing here, and it's beautiful that boldness begets boldness and courage begets courage. And what we're hoping to do here, or what I had in mind, was hopefully inspire not just our neighboring towns and cities and counties and state, but even other counties and towns in our country to take action, because if we all stand for what's right, they can't stop us all. I think what we do need to understand, though, if this gets worse, and it might, and we all must know that that's an option, that your local sheriffs are going to become very important if this gets really bad. Okay, they are the law of the land, and if it gets to a place where they say we don't want anyone else here, we are the ultimate authority, and we're not going to enforce anything. That's really what your great hope should be in. And I'm saying that with a worse path in mind, that we might have to realize that we might be eminently at some point necessitating a divorce. But for right now, what we're trying to do is take a stand for what is right, take a stand for the life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and for those whose incomes and livelihoods derive from business that we feel is unconstitutionally being shut down, as well as a lot of our liberties, almost in an experimental fashion that really smells horrible. Okay, and that's what my 2 cents.
Okay. Other board members that would like to speak?
I think that we definitely, most of us want to see our freedoms back. The risk is that if things do get worse, based on, Trustee Romanello, to your point, we will be under the magnifying glass. So that's one risk to consider as we move forward, and depending on how lax you want your business to be or how strict you want your business to be.
Trustee LeKind?
Well, in my contribution to this, I wanted to make clear that the 14th Amendment, Section 1, was called out because, as I said in the last meeting, the governor has acted like a tyrant in his execution of business closures throughout the state, and putting people out of business, out of work, and unable to feed their families. So the 14th Amendment and Section 1 of that specifically calls out his inability to do that, usurping the U.S. Constitution, which he has no authority to do. So I wanted to make sure that that was put into our resolution here to let the governor know that he doesn't have the authority to shut us down.
Trustee Unruh?
Yeah, I just kind of want to reiterate what's being said. The Constitution is our supreme authority. And, I mean, it's sad that we're having to come to a point to point it out, like, here it is. But I just want to commend Trustee Stevens. I understand, Trustee LeKind, you helped with this. Reading this just makes me proud again. And to Trustee Romanello's point, it just takes one person to stand up to fight this. And I think now is the time. I'm hoping, I think everyone's hope is as well, that we will be a beacon to the rest of the nation, because it's time that we fight these tyrannical overreaches of our freedoms. So yeah, I'm just very pleased with where this is going.
Thank you. Trustee Clark?
I too would like to throw my 10 cents in here and say thank you to all the board members for putting forth their efforts and their minds and their knowledge in participating in creating a resolution to protect our citizens' rights and freedoms according to the Constitution. And I am very proud of everyone for acting in unity to stand up together, because we have a lot of courageous people on this board. We have a Marine, a Navy man, a nurse that's an has exceptional understanding of the science behind disease. I definitely appreciate her wisdom and her statements that she made earlier. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Elliott. And I especially appreciate the committee coming together and utilizing their time and taking everyone's suggestions. And I would also like to thank the staff and the town attorney for helping to direct us. I think we'll be able to sleep well at night knowing we've done our best to uphold our Constitution and our oaths of office to defend it and our citizens. Thank you.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes, I think I'm in agreement with Trustee LeKind that we're declaring this action completely unconstitutional. So if the governor decides to send the Gestapo down to try to shut down businesses, I think we have a lawsuit on our hands. And I think we have a situation where, I don't know what's the best way to do it, but hopefully we can come up with hopefully they'll let us be and just say, oh, that's just monument and, let it go. But if it comes down to it, I think we have to, be prepared for, taking legal action, because I believe the Constitution is behind us. I believe statute is behind us, and hopefully the attorneys of the governor will read this and get it and be able to take appropriate action.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
I think I've said my final comments. I mean, I agree. We've got to do this. We've got to move forward, and we've got to support and maintain our constitutional rights.
Thank you. I would like to comment on a couple things in regards to Colorado's restrictions. Trustee Unruh mentioned being a beacon to the nation. I don't think that's actually necessary. There are almost 40 states that restaurants and bars are at 40 or 50% of capacity, while ours are at 25%. The 10 most restrictive states as far as regulations are all over the board. Some of them are doing well, some of them are doing horrible. The restrictions aren't showing, other than the basics of mask wearing and social distancing, the numbers aren't showing that the extended restrictions are doing any different. On a radio show Monday, the governor mentioned that the data does not show that restaurants are a significant spreader of COVID. And later in the conversation, he said it's who you dine with, not where you dine. In the conversation, it also came up that what's seen and not unseen, and how if you're not having a meal at a restaurant and you're having it at home, your risk, depending on who you're having with, is the same as it is in the restaurant. We are in support of our town's health and safety, and we do want to see everybody take the necessary precautions that fit them best. In other news, we also, over this past week, there's been 2 articles in our local Gazette. One of them was domestic violence is breaking a record this year during, well, the title is Pandemic-Fueled Domestic Violence Leads to Homicide Spikes in Colorado. The city of Denver, one of the most restrictive cities in the state for COVID restrictions, has had a 40% spike in aggravated assault domestic violence cases. We earlier in the beginning of the pandemic, we actually saw this locally, where we had an event that left us without 2 residents. I don't know that was directly related to COVID and restrictions and maybe being cooped up in their house, but we have seen that in the area. The other article was also El Paso County, again in 2020 during COVID, has had another record of youth suicides. El Paso County went maybe 2 or 3 years with a stagnant suicide rate. I think we had a really bad time, and I don't remember exactly. I'm sure somebody does, but I think it was 2018 that we had a really bad year with youth suicide. We have now broken that record in 2020. We want to make sure that our businesses do what they feel is safe, and that people are willing to take their own responsibility and make their own decisions. Like Trustee Stevens said, if you feel the need, if you walk into a restaurant and you feel it's not set up for you and you don't feel comfortable, try another time, try another place. We completely support each person's individual concerns. So with my 2 cents in, I would like to open it up for public comment. We will, Mr. Ricci, how long do you need to publish that a new copy of that?
I was hitting print now.
Okay. So we will go with public comments till 7 for now. Then we will recess and we will come back in a special meeting, and then we will allow, the board did agree we'd have public comments in the special meeting also. So we'd like to get through as many public comments as we can. If you would, please keep your comments limited and try not to repeat. If your comments along the same lines as the person prior to you, please just keep it short with reiterating what they said. Who would like to make public comment? Mr. Tellez.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Board of Trustees and Manager and everyone else. First, I first want to say thank you. I probably haven't been here and probably should have been here. I was humbled and honored to serve on a committee which the town of Monument gave grants to small businesses. I was firsthand able to speak to small businesses. I know the majority of them, probably 99.9%, were just ecstatic and happy that the lifeline was thrown out to them. A lot of them do agree and feel that their rights have been taken away here. The Constitution is being violated. I, for one, also, when we talk about the health department and who's in charge, I quickly want to let you guys know that, and maybe most of you do know, that out of 30 employees, we ended up having 2 employees that tested positive. They tested positive outside of work at their college. We took it upon ourselves, caring about our community, to close our restaurant for the next 2 weeks, quarantine everyone, and everyone had to be tested in order to come back to work. During that time, I spoke with the health department numerous occasions, let them know where we stood, what was happening, and so forth. When we reopened, we had a health inspector show up on the second day. Walked in, was giving us a quick review of our restaurant and so forth. And then I happened to ask, are we good to go? Is this the inspection after me being closed? And this health inspector had no clue that we had even closed. This inspector had no idea that we had 2 COVID positive tests done with 2 employees. In the end, after I spoke with this inspector, they tell me they're overwhelmed, they're inundated with what's going on, they can't even keep up. And they really don't have all the proper information in front of them, what's going on and why we're closed and why we're opening and so forth. About a week ago, we see another restaurant chain that comes in from the west, opens up, and has 140 positive cases. Hasn't closed for 1 single hour. But yet we're all sitting here saying the health department is showing science, which it's not. And the governor is taking upon his action to close businesses around and saying restaurants initially he said restaurants were a problem. Now he says they're not. I heard him 2 weeks ago throw all the responsibility on the CDC with the state. And he finally said, well, if they'll allow everyone to open, in his comments, he said, then we'll try to get everyone from red up to orange. Well, this whole last 8 months, it's been the governor saying everything and not the health department. All of a sudden now, he's putting all the responsibility on the health department. Again, I don't think the science is there. I haven't seen it. If anything that I have seen, which we have seen from some hospitals, is showing that restaurants were at the bottom 3% of any positive cases. 4 weeks ago, from the records I read in the state, there was only 51 positive cases coming from a restaurant in the state of Colorado. Not employees, just to the customers. That's nothing, guys. That's nothing. And right now I've been able to see and talk to other business owners as myself. We're struggling, and it's tough. When I was on that committee, I can't believe some of the restaurants or some of the businesses, not just restaurants, businesses, flower shops, nail salons, you name it. I can't believe they're open. I can't believe they're making it. They got to be throwing away money, and they got to be putting their retirements. They're throwing their retirements in here. I appreciate what each and every one of you are doing and standing up for our Constitution here right now. And I appreciate that, we will be under a magnifying lens. But I think if we're all in this together, I think there's no way the state's going to come and shut down one business. So if we all stick together and we appreciate it. I know there's some people that may not agree with this. Well, have somebody take away your home. Have somebody take away your way of life. It's a big deal. Thank you.
Can I just say something? I will take one of your burgers and stand in line any day over that other place.
I appreciate it.
Mr. Ricci, before we go on, can you make a handful of two-sided copies, so that anyone here in person might want a copy or want to look at it for questions they may have it? Okay. Who else would like to make comment? Commissioner Williams.
Commissioner Holly Williams, I did have a longer speech prepared, but I think I'm going to keep it simple because I'm more interested to hear what everybody else has to say. Thank you for the resolution. I did just 2 things. I guess essential businesses are defined by the federal government, which is then, reiterated in the state order. And the other thing is we really do enjoy distributing that CARES Act money to you and the COVID relief money, and so there wouldn't be any concerns finance-wise from the county. We're starting our audit now, and they may call and ask you for the documents, like they said in their intergovernmental agreement, and that would be about it. As far as the money's out the door, we want to see it help the economy. Third thing I should say is PPACG is distributing more money. So monument businesses need to go onto their website, find out how to apply for it. It's the same application the county used through the Colorado Enterprise Institute. Go apply, get more relief. It's coming from the state government, and we need to keep our businesses alive. Thank you.
Thank you. To reiterate what Commissioner Williams said, there is a new assistance program. It is on the town website that will link you to PPACG, which is the Area Council of Governments that will help you get through the application process. Also, I want to mention CARES Act. Commissioner Williams confirmed that the CARES money we have used and any future CARES money will not be harmed by this resolution. I want to point out that Monument was one of the first towns to give the large majority of our money back to the businesses. Mr. Tellez spoke of that, and after we did that, about 3 other towns, municipalities asked us for guidance on how to do the same program. So that was contagious, and money actually that was going to the town went back to the businesses in a direct form. Who would like to speak next? If you would, state your name when you...
My name is Danny Brista. I was here last week, and it's great to see even more faces this week. And I love everything that I'm hearing, and it's obvious that you are standing for the Constitution and for our rights as sovereign beings to make our own decisions as individuals, and that's what I do for myself. I don't know if what I'm about to share is, too much, too little, too late, but this is what I've been using personally since it came out on March 25th, and that's the Executive Order D-2020-017. I'm just going to go over under Directives, Part 2, Section C. I direct all businesses other than those qualified as critical businesses under Public Health Order 20-24 or any public health order issued pursuant to this executive order to close temporarily, except as necessary to engage in minimum basic operations needed to protect assets and maintain personnel functions as of the effective date of this executive order. For me, that tells me right there that I'm allowed to continue working, except as needed to protect my assets. On page 3 under number 2, individuals must be permitted to carry on basic activities necessary to care for themselves, their families, and to maintain their places of residence. That tells me that I have to work in order to take care of my home, in order to take care of my family. So I don't know if that helps with anything that you guys have been discussing this evening. But I personally think it's great because we can use their own verbiage against them on a state level. They gave us permission right here, even though permission isn't needed, because I will make that choice on my own, on what I'm going to do. Really, that's all I have to say. Thank you for all your time.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak? Mr. Anderson, do we have any? Ms. Plank?
Thank you. Tommy Plank, owner of Covered Treasures Bookstore. Over the last year, in watching all of the regulations come down, it's been of great concern to me that the shutdowns have come from the governor in a way of supporting the tri-county health departments, the local health departments, the county health departments, all of which are made up of people who are not answerable to the electors. They're appointed by governors, by commissions of some sort by boards, and then they make laws and regulations based on what they think is right, and they don't answer to us anymore. So I'm not so sure that you don't need to address those bodies in your resolution. Luckily, my bookstore is not licensed by a health department, but the hairdressers in town are. The barbers in town are. I assume the nail techs are. And they are afraid of losing their licenses if they don't follow the demands of the various health departments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Plank. Mr. Anderson, do we have anyone online wishing to make comment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, will you please queue them up and let me know when they are ready? Ms. Pemberton, would you please make your comments?
Could I possibly speak, please?
One moment. Ms. Pemberton.
There we are. Sorry, I couldn't get my phone unmuted.
Okay, go ahead.
My name is Megan Pemberton. I'm a resident of Woodmore. My residence sadly precludes me from voting in monument elections, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to voice my opinion regarding this measure. I am incredibly disappointed in the town's position regarding COVID restrictions and precautions. Your stamp does not represent all of your constituents, and the fact that you drafted this measure without community input is unconscionable. I understand the suffering small business owners are going through. I lost my job over the summer when the business I helped build from the ground up for over 6 years was forced to close its doors. I'm still devastated about it. However, disregarding rules and regulations that have been put in place by the governor's office and the health department are not the way to help local businesses stay afloat. Programs like the 5-Star program are there to help, and I'm sad that we haven't pursued that program for our town's businesses. By disregarding regulations, you are allowing businesses to compromise their community's health and safety. Allowing people to run amok will further the spread of COVID, putting the lives of our community members at risk. This will also potentially cause further spread within our schools, potentially forcing them to close. If or when that happens, community members and the board will continue to wring their hands and wonder why. In response to the first speaker's assertion that you all are not trying to be rebels and you're urging personal responsibility, your assertions are laughable. None of you are even wearing masks tonight. So obviously, personal responsibility is not at all at the forefront of your minds. Keeping all of those things in mind, your resolution does not help local businesses by preventing such shutdowns, loss of revenue, etc. This is pure political grandstanding, and you have more important things to do in your time. I'm disappointed. We're better than this, and shame on all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson, who do we have next? Mr. Silva. Mr. Silva, would you please mute your microphone and go ahead with your comments? Mr. Silva, if you're commenting, it's still showing you're on mute.
Hi. I don't know if I can't really hear. I don't know what's wrong with my audio. Could you nod if you can hear me?
We can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to address to you, the Board of Trustees. My name is Nathan, a current resident of Seattle and former resident of Monument, whose family still lives in Monument. I would like to talk to you in this meeting on the grounds of empathy and rationality. First, I would like to share my story. When I was 14, my mom was hospitalized for a month after being paralyzed due to a multiple sclerosis attack on Thanksgiving. I had to watch my brother for a month, fearful that I would never see my mom again. At the time, I was religious. I prayed for her every single morning and every single night. Today, I feel for people who currently have friends and family hospitalized. Today, I fear for the well-being of my mother, and I feel for a close family friend who just lost a father and best friend to COVID-19. I understand the core reasons behind your consideration of such a resolution or even openly disagreeing with these restrictions. The economy, especially the local economy of Monument, is in a very bad place. Local businesses feel like their rights are in violation. Additionally, many of you missed the way of living prior to the pandemic. You miss going about your business without wearing a mask. You miss your places of worship. You miss the world before 2020. But as a concerned family member of someone with underlying conditions, I would like to urge you to uphold the governor's restrictions, CDC guidelines, and COVID precautions, and to promote following these precautions with the local governance of Monument. It is in everyone's best interests. It is in your best interests. There have been too many people who have died from this highly infectious disease during this pandemic. Last week, the U.S. reported more COVID-19 cases and deaths than any previous weeks during the pandemic. On Thursday, January 7, over 4,080 new cases were reported, the most reported during a single day in the pandemic, and an average of 2,764 deaths per day. All of this is according to data from Johns Hopkins University. I would like to remind that the number of confirmed and reported cases is much lower than the actual number of cases due to mildly symptomatic and asymptomatic cases that go unreported. I would also like to note that these counties with the most cases, despite the most restrictions, also have the highest degrees of population densities and population counts. One of my professors at my university used the stop sign analogy that I feel is relevant. At a stop sign, we stop because it is the societal norm and expectation to preserve the well-being and safety of others. At a stop sign, we do not regard it as a violation of our freedom, but instead a practice of helping others. To many people, this practice of helping others is religious. Do unto others as I do to myself. These guidelines and restrictions are like that stop sign. We follow them to preserve the well-being and safety of each other. If you have the privilege of not worrying about your health, it is your responsibility to help the health of other people. This pandemic has been especially hard on the people who have lost their friends and family to COVID, like my close family friend. Our medical workers who have been working constantly despite the strain it has placed on the overwhelmed healthcare system have also felt the blunt of this pandemic. Out of respect to all of these people, I urge you to promote and call for the enforcement of CDC guidelines and state practices. It would be wiser to debate these state guidelines and restrictions, the governor's powers after the pandemic, after mass vaccination grants the nation a herd immunity. Even a simple disagreement from a board that represents local governance can create a miscommunication to locals about following these guidelines. Please assert that even despite any potential disagreement, you support and follow these guidelines for the safety and well-being of your neighbors. Urge your neighbors to follow these guidelines. I empathize with local and small businesses who have been struggling during this pandemic, but there are alternatives to jeopardizing the well-being of the workers of these small businesses and the customers. You could call for local fundraising and advocate to your representatives for an adequate stimulus that provides relief for these mom and pop shops. I beg you not to place my friends and family in Monument in danger. I beg you not place your friends and family in danger. Following and supporting these precautions are in everyone's best interest. I understand you do not have the full power to enforce these precautions, but you have the power to promote these precautions and even do your part to reject liquor licenses who violate the COVID restrictions. I know this is unpopular. And work with the governor for now instead. Let Monument be a model citizen for the rest of El Paso County and the rest of the state. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Did y'all just turn the audio off?
No, go ahead. Actually, I had my microphone off. That's my fault. Go ahead, Ms. Ricci.
Okay, so Am I right? Did I hear somebody earlier saying thank you for all the maskless guests? Because that is pretty ridiculous considering we're in the middle of a pandemic. All I know is, what is the end goal of this thing? Are you trying to make it so people don't have to wear masks? Because I don't see any of y'all wearing masks. And I find it very interesting that not only do you guys not understand the Constitution, the only people that you have standing up here are business owners, not your constituents. And that tells me what you care about, money and not people. And you know those cities that you talk about, you sort of forgot to, mention how dense they are and how the police officers and nobody is enforcing any of these things. And you guys think the police officers, I am so upset about this. All I know is me and many of my friends that live around here, we will not spend a dime if you go through with this. You are going to screw businesses over because they're not going to understand that you don't have the authority. You admitted yourself that you don't have the authority for any of this. But they're going to think they're protected and they're going to lose their livelihood anyway because of you. It's gross. It's ridiculous. We don't even have a hospital here. So we're going to have to rely on the other hospitals. And you're exactly right. What happened in Castle Rock had no say over what happened to that business. Neither will y'all. You're a disgrace, and I am embarrassed that I live here. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will recess for 5 minutes and then return for the special meeting regarding the resolution.